Well, September is Tourism Month in South Africa, and it really should be a great celebration of huge numbers of foreigners travelling to South Africa for the summer season from cold northern climes, and South Africans preparing for their December holidays. But this September, it's entirely different, and that's because of COVID-19. We are seeing a resumption of domestic travel, and not a moment too soon. The South African travel destinations come under huge strain after 6 months of having absolutely no business whatsoever. Three great guests for you this evening to give you a really good perspective as to what is happening in South Africa's tourism sector. Well, first evening, Sisa Ntshona, who's Chief Executive of SA Tourism. And what we've seen in the last couple of weeks is that interprovincial travel has been allowed. Sisa Ntshona, it's not a moment too soon.
Yeah, good evening, Bruce. Absolutely. We are thrilled that we've reached this milestone as a country and as a sector. For 5 months, we've really been locked in. Now, I think there's opportunity then, as part of our recovery plan to start off with domestic and hopefully get to international as soon as possible.
How is it possible to tell how many accommodation establishments have collapsed in the last 5 or 6 months? I can't imagine that everybody would have survived zero business for as long as this.
Absolutely. I mean, the most vulnerable are usually the smallest ones, but it's also a running tally, So even though the sector is open for domestic, it's still not enough for some of the businesses that have kind of been left out, And, tourism is a perishable product. You can't stockpile it, you lose a date, that's it, So therefore, it's not as if they can make up for missed time, And, so it's still very tough times, and it's a global phenomenon. So we're all in the same boat.
I have a friend who is a cheapskate. He's a financial advisor who, during stage 5 lockdown, bought a tourism future and just this week exercised his tourism feature and went to Asabi Sands private game lodge at 20% of the normal price. We've seen quite a lot of those deals come through, and it's been, I think, maybe a little bit of a lifeblood for some of the tourism properties.
Yeah, look, the market is recalibrating, So after 5 months, we were all pressing the reset button. So whatever pricing that you had before COVID is kind of null and void. And we have to find a new equilibrium, as it were. Also taking into account that there is no external money coming in terms of international visitors. So all businesses have to look locally and, again, find that sweet spot that actually, is appropriate for the local consumer. And I'd like to use the word value proposition as opposed to price. So some businesses have had to tinker with their offering. Does Bruce need, 3-4 course meals a day, or, just wants to go for breakfast and sort himself out during the rest of the day? So again, just adjusting that and then just making sure that you hit the sweet note for the local guy.
So, Sisa, are we traveling? I mean, are we doing cross-border, cross-provincial border travel? Are we comfortable to leave our homes, our suburbs, our cities? Are we going further afield?
It's happening, Bruce. I mean, there's been a lot of pent-up demand, and I think it's expressing itself right now. We've seen bookings, especially over weekends, really hitting quite high. Bushes and outside areas where social distancing can happen are really popular. What's really under pressure is more the urban hotels, right, in the middle of cities and towns. And that's a result of really government business and conferences really coming to a halt, and also corporates reassessing whether they need to send their staff all over the country, So that's probably slower to pick up. We've seen some bigger establishments that take a bit longer to actually warm up the engine, as it were, to open up, with the likes of the Sun Cities of this world that are only going to come on stream now as well. So we are slowly switching on the lights and kind of getting back on. But we are also, always assessing the demand all the time that's coming through there. We are embarking right now.
The mighty Sun International, I mean, this is an unbreakable organization reporting huge losses in its hospitality businesses and announcing some very, very significant layoffs, not only at Sun City, which, as you say, is opening up now, but at the Table Bay in Cape Town, for example, the Wild Coast Sun, very, very popular destinations, but they're having to be flexible. And you might book into the Cabanas, but have to go and stay at the Cascades, or you booked at the Cascades, you might have to go and stay at the palace or vice versa. It's a time of extraordinary flexing that has to happen in the tourism industry, and it's going to take a huge amount of, I think, understanding from consumers and from product providers alike.
Absolutely. Both sides of the equation. I think all of us are kind of gotten used to having our temperatures taken 20 times a day, depending where you're moving to, and just trying to keep up what the temperature is, at a given point in time. Yes, you're absolutely right, is that flexibility and agility is the name of the game, right? We are all trying to move our fixed costs and trying to make them as variable costs because we just don't know how quickly and how strong, the market is going to return. So we need that agility to be able to respond quite quickly from that perspective. I think the unfortunate thing then, all of our business models are being questioned. And again, the unfortunate thing is that, it results in some of the staff, being laid off based on the level of activity. I think once things start to pick up again, we can try to absorb some of that activity back in terms of the staff and everything else. But for now, it's a bit of a touch and go.
I mean, South Africa's tourism industry is heavily dependent, particularly at the top end of tourism, on foreign travel. And foreign travel doesn't switch on and off like Eskom. There's a long lag. And so even if we start opening up for foreign travel now, it doesn't mean that we're going to have a bumper Christmas season, however much pent-up demand there is. A lot of people might book now for next December, not for this December. So the sooner we start opening up to foreign travel and at least letting the world know that we're open for business, the sooner we repair 2021's travel seasons.
Yeah, there are so many variables, and different permutations that we have all the time there. We are still trying to understand the modern day traveler's consumer behavior, and we can't assume that it's the same as previous. We've seen, lead times really shorten. And the Northern Hemisphere has provided us a lot of lessons, both in what to do and also what not to do. And we've seen there in terms of certain countries opening up, closing up again. We are lucky because in the sense that, our lockdown was during our off-peak season, which is our winter season. Now that we've opened up domestic just in time, for spring, really gives us great momentum as, we try to get a hold on the pandemic and then aim for our summer season.
Have you got any indication whatsoever from your government minister as to when foreign travel might be allowed again?
My opinion, for every time I get asked that question, basically, I'll be in a very different space. Look, the reality, I think, that we all have to be cognizant of, the sector is ready for international. They've put in protocols and everything else. They've done as much as they can. What we have to ask ourselves, is the world ready to travel to South Africa? We're still in the top 6 in the world, basically, in terms of the infection rate. And whilst we're in that, company of being in the top 10, a lot of countries will place travel advisories against us. So whilst we may want to open, if we open up too soon, we just have no one coming because no one will be, willing to come to South Africa. And also South Africans won't be welcomed into many countries around the world. So we've got to focus on getting ourselves off that top 10, in my view, of the top 20. Then I think we'll have a better chance of saying, let's time the market correctly.
In the short term, there's a patriotic duty for all of us to travel locally. It's really imperative from an economy point of view, from a jobs point of view, and also to keep these tourism properties alive for the future, because they won't be able to sustain much longer, many of these properties, without our support. And if we can't go anywhere else, we may as well shop local, and it's probably long overdue.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. In terms of, we're always keeping our eye on what we call the supply side deterioration. How quickly can those businesses ramp up and get some sort of activity in order to hold them in place? The other opportunity then lies how do we shine the spotlight on some of the hidden gems around the country? How do we get you to travel to the Northern Cape, as an example, so that your tourism rands also spread across the country and not just in the big nodes? That becomes quite important. And that's certainly part of the campaigns of driving, of showcasing all of South Africa, rural, township, right across the board, so that we can all immerse ourselves in this opportunity we've been given to know our country again.
Sisa and Ntshona, thank you very much. Chief Executive at SA Tourism. pleading to you to do some travel and also hoping for the borders of our country to open up so that we can welcome foreign visitors to keep our fantastic tourism destinations flowing. More on this topic this evening here on Taking Stock in a moment. Well, to the Kruger National Park this evening here on Taking Stock, and we need to look at the state of the country's national parks that were deeply affected by lockdown. And Gareth Coleman is the recently appointed executive in charge of the Kruger National Park. You actually joined in the middle of lockdown, Gareth. I mean, you haven't had many customers, but you are open for business.
Absolutely. We opened kind of fully we started opening on the 14th, certainly for overnight accommodation, but we were open a bit earlier for self-drives. But yeah, it's been a slow opening, but interesting to watch. Good to see people coming back.
It must have been an incredible time, though, for the park, which is, often has lots and lots of visitors on an annual basis. Did it lead to a bit of a regeneration? Did it lead to a change in animal behavior? Has it led to a change in dynamics within the park?
Well, they say it takes quite some time for animal behavior to really change, but we certainly saw some kind of slight shifts in terms of the movement of animals into certain places at certain times of the day. So, for example, in the staff villages and certainly around the camps which were closed, the animals were kind of moving around at night time and at times which you don't normally see them. So there was a little bit of thing, but I wouldn't say the behavior has been fundamentally altered by COVID.
There was a video circulating recently on social media of one of the private lodges in the Sabi Sand and a leopard just wandering through the open areas. And you go, my goodness gracious me. I mean, the animals do seem to have taken back control, and it's a little bit exciting on that front. I'm sure that there's a staged opening process. I mean, is the Kruger Park fully open all the way down from Berg and Dal in the south and Lower Sabi all the way up to Pafuri in the north? I mean, is everything up and running?
No, it's not. We were first of all expecting quite a slow phased opening. It was very difficult dealing with regulations because they were changing so often. So you have a situation whereby they say only intra-provincial travel. Then we have to cancel all the people outside the province, for example, for the month of August. And then a week later they say, well, there's actually inter-provincial travelers open. So you've got to reopen your booking system. So there's been a bit of coming and going and a bit of trying to adjust to that. We've opened, we more or less fully opened. There are a couple of camps which we haven't opened. We'll be doing some additional upgrading and refurbishments, in particular in Lataba, certain portions of Skukuza, which will more or less be fully open probably in the next couple of weeks, and then in Shingwedzi. And then there's a couple of the smaller camps which are not fully open yet, but we've managed to ramp it up in the last couple of days.
Are you limiting access at all? I mean, Skukuza is like the Grand Central Station, if you like, of the Kruger Park. It can get incredibly busy in busy times. That makes social distancing really hard to do, and particularly as the facilities are fairly limited. How are you managing the flow of people, or the anticipated flow of people?
Look, to be honest with you, at the moment, it's certainly busy and full in what's it be. We're not at full capacity. A lot of campers and not all our accommodation cruises yet open. There's no regulation or requirement for us to scale down the numbers of occupancies except for in public spaces. So we need to ensure that no more than 50% of people, for example, are in restaurants or in certain public spaces, and that's the major kind of limitation at the moment. But in terms of actual accommodation occupancies, no, there's no real limitation on us.
We were just chatting to Sisa Ntshona a moment ago, Chief Executive at SA Tourism, and he is really desperately seeking foreign travel to open up again. And I was chatting to him about the lag from the moment you open up until the time the bookings start coming through. Are you taking foreign bookings at all in anticipation of that, perhaps March, next year's winter season? Because you're certainly not going to get too many foreign travelers, even if it opens up in the next month or two for this summer season.
Look, there's no restriction on who can book, but you take your chances. You know, we've obviously got bookings from foreign tourists because our bookings always operate 11 months ahead. And that's part of the challenge of trying to it has been part of the challenge of the last few months of removing people and getting new bookings or moving them to different places and the like. So, yeah, we're certainly looking forward to international travels, but we're pretty certain that, and there's a lot of South Africans who want to come to Kruger National Park. It's almost a kind of, I think, a place where people just want to come and release after having felt quite a lot of lockdown.
Absolutely. I mean, the freedom that the bush gives at the best of times is incredible, and there must be a huge sense of that pent-up release coming through in the Kruger Park. What's the state of the park? I mean, lots of baby animals at this time of the year, early spring rains coming through, little green shoots coming through. It's almost the symbolism of the rebirth, perhaps, of the tourism industry.
Yeah, it's been quite dry. We've had our first rains, or we've had rains the last couple of days, which has been good. From a bushfire point of view, we've done a bit of burning, which is required at this time of the year. But it's the game viewing is quite good down here in the south. I've certainly seen a lot of animals. Our major challenge has probably been around some of the damage that's been done by primates to our thatching of our cottages. They've had a whale of a time. They move through in troops and playing over the thatch and pull it out as they go sliding down, and that takes a bit of time and effort to fix.
Are we going to see a modernization of Kruger Park? I mean, you've been appointed now as the managing executive for Kruger Park. Kruger Park, many aspects of it still significantly old school. Lots of talk in recent times of not quite, resort accommodation, but just, perhaps modernizing the experience a little bit for well-heeled travelers, people who might want more of a Asabi Sand sort of experience within a national park. Are you looking at that kind of expansion into the future? What is your thinking right now?
No, certainly. Look, I mean, we have to move with the times. Our market is an aging market, and we're fully cognizant of that. We have just built a Skukuza Lodge in the middle of Skukuza, which is a really first-class product. If you walked into it, it's really something significantly different to what we've had in the past. We're trying to link that with conferencing and with golfing and the golf course, which is here, and integrate that into a different type of experience. Certainly, if we want to attract different types of tourists, we have to upgrade our accommodation and look for new things. We're currently looking at spas. We're looking at tree lodges. We're actually even beginning to investigate a backpackers lodge. So for us, trying to break into the younger youth market is of fundamental importance for the sustainability of tourism in the park, for the revenue that's needed for conservation. So short answer is yes, definitely.
Looking forward to seeing the developments. Gareth Coleman, thank you very much for joining us this evening on Taking Stock. He is Managing Executive for the Kruger National Park. We're wrapping up Taking Stock this evening with Andrew Stark, who is the Managing Director of Flight Centre in South Africa. You've just come back from Kruger Park. What was it like?
Fantastic. So good to be on holiday. A self-drive all the way down from Johannesburg to Hazyview for a couple of nights, and then into the Kruger Park, Skukuza, for 2 nights with the family. My kids have said it's the best holiday they've ever had. It's because it's been the only holiday they've had in the last year.
For so many people, I think they'll relate to this idea of just a weekend away feels like a 2-week holiday, simply because everyone has been so constrained for so long. But that's been a massive burden for your industry. I mean, as a travel agency, you do lots of outbound travel, you do lots of packages for internal travel. I mean, you guys must have been really coming close to breaking point.
Yeah, it's probably the toughest time that we've probably ever faced, to be honest with you, Bruce. And, no one could have predicted this. I've said to my risk team, where on the risk report was there ever a thing called a global pandemic that will stop your business in its tracks in a couple of days, and you'd have next to no income in your business for a 5-6 month period. So we're very glad to see that domestic borders are opening up. It's small green shoots, as we say, and small wins. We're excited for, potentially, the opening of international borders, which is the big question everyone's asking, and especially our customers. But for now, we're very grateful for the fact that domestic borders have opened, and there are some green shoots that are starting to come through.
Have you had to scale back on your operations? I mean, we've seen various big South African businesses, big global businesses shut their doors. They simply could not make a go of it anymore. There's no sort of runway, if you like, of future tourism. So people have had to call it quits. So are you scaling back at all?
Yeah, we have, and thankfully we did that quite early on in the piece. We were a staff complement of about 1,100. We've scaled that back down to just under 700, and we had a footprint in South Africa of just over 100 shops, and that's been scaled back to just over 50 shops. So you can see we made some hard and tough decisions, but we realized the new booking trends of the future world, or let's call it the post-COVID world, is certainly going to be a lot more online. And what I've said to many, many people is really what we've done is we've taken our 2025 plan and we've brought it forward by 5 years. And we said, this is how the business probably needs to look. So we've made tough decisions in a very tough time. And, it's been difficult, but, we talk about the rebirth that's about to happen. And I think we're a company that's always encouraged about the positivity of what's ahead for us. And we've been through some very, very bad times and dark periods, but we're really looking forward to some, sort of the light at the end of the tunnel.
I mean, Satya Nadella, the Microsoft chief executive, was quoted the other day saying that, 2 years of digital revolution happened in 2 months during this lockdown. And I think that's exactly what you're reflecting as you chat to us this evening. I mean, the birth of the internet was meant to kill the travel agency. In fact, we, consolidated the travel agency. There's always been a space for advice and personal service. Do you see that surviving post-COVID?
Absolutely, and I think what COVID really taught us was how important it still was to have a connection, a human connection. The refund process, as you can imagine, we went through. Globally, we've gone through over 1 million refunds globally, passengers worldwide, and South Africa is no different. We talk to customers on a daily basis, and I really get the feeling that customers have really valued and appreciate the fact that they can actually pick up the phone and talk to someone. There are some travel companies that are still around, and there's some travel companies that aren't. One thing we've been very proud of is the fact that we've constantly communicated with our customers on a day-to-day basis. And I think every customer out there is really worried about is their money safe. So all we've tried to do is stay top of mind and keep reassuring them that their money is safe if they're booked with flights in a travel group. How you speak about financial runway, it's been a core to our existence here. We've been around here 26 years in South Africa, and we're proud to say that our financial runway should see us through the next 2 to 3 years without any income coming through our business. So we retained our profits over a 26-year period. We've got a very good, well-run business, and we're certainly here to stay. We might have to make some tough decisions in the short term, but nothing stops us, reopening stores if we need to, but investing heavily in our online technology and our e-com platforms.
And I guess, like everybody else, you're gagging for a return to some kind of normality, even if it is SADC, so that people can travel to Zambia or can go to Tanzania or can go to Mauritius on holiday once again. And I suspect that's the way our opening is going to happen, is more regional before we go for full-on global travel. And I mean, you're a high-volume, low-margin business. You need to get travelers in and get travelers out. Some suck best estimate as to when you'll be able to do that, or more of that?
So I think that's the golden question that has the platinum answer to it. For us, I think it's going to be travel bubbles initially. So I think we're going to get, things like Zanzibar, Mauritius, Zambia opening up first. I think it's about the relationships we have with governments across the world, because as much as South Africa opens up their borders in November, the rest of the world might not accept South Africans into their countries. Furthermore, capacity constraints. You've got airlines will need months and months, I think, of notice before they put inventory on certain routes. So it's not a matter of a switch of a button with our president announcing on a Saturday evening that borders open on a thing. There's going to be a lot of logistics that goes into opening our international airspace. My concern is the longer we leave it, the last we in line with international carriers, with inventory and routes. We've always known South Africa it's not a hub. But South Africa serves a really strong inbound focus into South Africa. And if inbound's not coming in, I really struggle to see a lot of real international carriers supporting the South African route. So I think, my, support to government would be, let's talk to international carriers. Let's give them some indication as into when we will see these international borders open, both for international airlines logistically, as well as South Africans, who I think are all chomping at the bit to know when they're going to see their loved ones globally.
Andrew Stark, thank you very much, Managing Director, Flight Centre in South Africa. Thank you for watching Taking Stock on ENCA this evening. Thanks also to Sisa Ntshona, who's Chief Executive of South African Tourism. Also to Gareth Coleman, who is the Managing Executive of Kruger Park, and also the Flight Centre Managing Director, Andrew Stark, joining us this evening, giving us a very clear perspective on the tourism sector in South Africa as we go through what's going to be a really difficult summer season for tourism operators in the country, but looking ahead to 2021 and the world opening up once again. That's it for Taking Stock. Thank you for watching. Good night.